There's been no answer to what they did with the Russia collusion hoax.
You mean Adam Schiff, who's still taken seriously?
Promoted that. They promoted that in mainstream media. They promoted that. Politicians promoted it. They called him a Russian asset.
Listen, Adam Schiff, he was the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Is that what it is? Adam Schiff knew. He never saw any evidence that Trump was in collusion with the Russians, or that the Russians were interfering in American elections, or that whatever. Or that there may have been evidence of that, but there was no evidence that Russia and Trump were in collusion. And he kept saying it. He kept saying it on every news outlet he could. That's a fact. And he knew otherwise. And no one's held him to task for that. That was a lie to the American people. It just was. And that's what I have a problem with.
And there's been no acknowledgement, like in mainstream media, that was a hoax and that he was innocent of what they were accusing him of.
None.
That is so wild. And they go from that to new accusations. So for the casual, for the person that's not doing a deep dive in all these stories and reading all these articles, what you're getting is the narrative that you see in headlines. Trump indicted again. Trump's a criminal. Trump did this. Trump, incited people to enter the Capitol on January 6th because he said the election was rigged.
And all this trouble that Biden is in now and his son is in was all on Hunter Biden's laptop. Yeah. And we were told that there was nothing to see there.
Didn't
51
51 members of intelligence agencies signed off on that? It was Russian disinformation.
There you go. So what does that do about that? My problem with all of this is that it just destroys credibility.
Yeah.
It destroys people's faith in the
What you said earlier is perfect. It's un-American.
Yeah.
It really is. And I know you're doing it because you think you want to beat this guy by any means necessary, but you're becoming a tyrant.
You're setting up a system that's going to be used against you too.
100%. And it's also setting a precedent of things that we allow.
Yeah.
And no one seems to care because it's Trump. Because it's Trump, he's like a non-human to them. Like all the rules of empathy and dignity and the most charitable view of things never apply.
That's right.
It's like the worst examples of anything that he's ever said or anything he's ever done, and that's all he is.
Well, and
if you say, even if you say that, you're a Trump apologist. But like you got to look at what is going on. There's a massive movement to keep this guy from being president again, and some of it you don't want to see happening in a democratic society.
No. My worry is that, I really do think legacy media, a lot of these people come from the same colleges, the same area codes. They do see the world differently than most of us who are out there trying to build a life.
Isn't that wild?
It is wild.
That they somehow or another are supposedly representing the frequency of the country, but they're so off. Yeah. And they think they're superior because they're very educated.
Yeah.
And because they're indoctrinated into this progressive ideology, and they think that there's a mandate to not just exist and do your thing, but to change the world and mold it into these ideas that you were indoctrinated with in school.
Yeah, and there becomes this lateral cooperation with the powers that be. And so they can very easily highlight one story and suppress another, or just not report on another. And when you walk into a newsroom and you're somebody who's looking to speak truth to power and be part of the way the Fourth Estate should really work, which used to be that journalists were all blue-collar guys and gals who hit the pavement. Now you've got people that agree with the idea, for example, that maybe people who are in power with this education know a little bit more than the people that are actually out, the fly-by states. That great, I can't remember who said it might have been William F. Buckley who said, you have to understand that would you rather be ruled by the Harvard faculty or the first 2,000 names in the Boston phone book? If you believe in democracy, you've got to say the first 2,000 names in the Boston phone book. It sounds very enticing to get the Harvard faculty. They're smart as shit. They know what's best for all of us. Let the philosopher kings run it. But that's not how our grand experiment works. And I think this is the greatest country in the world because it always pushes the ideal and the idea that the individual should always supersede the collective, that the collective will always become a tyranny. And you as an individual have certain inalienable rights that can't be taken away from you, no matter which way the wind blows, and no matter how strong the collective is. That's such an important distinction. It is the fundamental distinction between being somebody who's for free markets and democracy and somebody who's a socialist. That's why I think socialism is way more dangerous. All these young people have a favorable view of socialism. No, I'm sorry. Now you have a top-down authority that believes in orchestrating and socially engineering equality at all costs, which means we got to keep the people that are really excelling. You got to keep them down a little bit. That's why you have Congress people like saying things like in California, "Fuck Elon Musk." They say stuff like that to a guy who creates that many jobs and is that innovative and that much of a risk taker. And that's what I worry about.
I worry that human beings naturally, we have an inclination towards competition. And we think about things not just for the greater good of the country, but when you're locked into a party war, it's the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party. This is a sports game. And whatever dirty tricks you can use by deflating balls or fucking spiking people's Kool-Aid, whatever the fuck you can do to get people to lose or to win, there's going to be certain elements of your party that are willing to do that. There's going to be. The problem is when it becomes the intelligence agencies. The problem is when when they're colluding, like
I know.
they're working in conjunction, and then also they're contacting social media companies.
I think that some of it is the stuff you've talked about, which is this is new territory. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to deal with the amount of misinformation and malinformation and disinformation. You don't know where it's coming from.
How much of it's coming from us?
Well,
do you think there's any American misinformation troll farms?
Yes.
Do you think the government funds them?
Yes.
Jesus.
It would make sense. I don't think it's done with I don't think conspiracies I think that there are programs and ideas that might be, you might set up a propaganda ministry quietly to combat something else. Yeah. We did that with ISIS. They were very good with their recruiting and stuff like that. Yeah. So we said, let's figure out a way to deal with that.
Yeah, but that would be best case scenario. Yeah, they do it to combat ISIS.
This is new for people. This is new. You've got to, there's all this blowback. You come up with a plan. This is hard stuff. There's no group of people who are so smart and they're planning all this shit. Good luck. Too many moving parts in life.